Hi class, it's Jolene here. We're going to learn how to create outlines on type. But I start demonstrating how to accomplish that, let's understand what it is and what it isn't and why we do it. So you see here, creating to outline converts type from a font, which is editable, to artwork. So once it becomes artwork, it's no longer editable as type. You can do lots of other things with it, but it's no longer editable as type. Let's make sure we understand the distinction between creating outlines and a stroke. If you put a stroke on type, for instance, let's use this piece of type right here, and I'll switch over to my outlines and make the outline, or the stroke, I should say, green. So that's putting a stroke on type, and it's different than creating outlines. I'm going to take that stroke off now. Close this. So here's what happens if you don't create outlines on type, and then you send your artwork to a printer, for instance, or to a colleague who's going to work on the file. If you don't create outlines, this is what it looks like. I'll switch to a file that was sent to me by a student. This is a common mistake that students make. You can see here this type that says Happy St. Patrick's Day. It's got pink behind it, which is alerting me to the fact that I don't have the font that was used for this type. The student chose a font that I don't have. So when I go to grade this, I can't see what the student actually intended with that type. Now, if I switch over to Bridge, where I can see that exact same file in Bridge, this is what the student meant for the type to look like. But this is just a thumbnail of it. So I can see it here, but this isn't real. This over here back in Illustrator is what's real. So if this file were sent to the printer, this is what the type would look like. It has no style to it. It's not what the student intended. So to prevent that from happening, you need to make sure you create outlines on your type. So let's go back to this file and let's see how to do that. Here's a word that I've created in a font that some of you may not have. It's a font that I downloaded. It's called Abraham Lincoln. Let me make this a little bigger so you can see this happen. So right now I can edit this type. I can remove the S. I can add other things to it. It's editable type because it's still in the font. Put it back the way I had it. So now here's how I create outlines on it and what it looks like when you have outlines. So select the word with the black tool, go up to type, and then create outlines, or Shift Control O, create outlines. And now you can see that the type looks different. It's actually, I can no longer edit it as type. I can't change the spelling of the word or anything. So once it's now artwork. It's now a vector graphic. So if I click on this again, I can do some pretty cool things with it. I can go up to Object and Ungroup, and now each letter is a oops, let me put that back. Each letter is a separate piece. I can move it separately. I'll put that back. I can do things like, I'm going to hold down Shift and grab the corner and make that O larger for artistic purposes, perhaps. So there's some interesting things. Let's select the S. Maybe I'll make that also large like the O. And now we have something that's a little more interesting with our type. And remember that type is not only just part of your overall composition, your overall creation, it's a really, really important piece of your composition. So being able to create outlines is really important. So the two main reasons to create outlines on your type: it saves you the trouble of having to send the font to everyone who wants to use the file, such as the printer or a colleague, and it allows you to manipulate the type in artistic ways. Now I want to go back and show you one more thing that is an important tip that'll save you a lot of time as you're creating your artwork on all the assignments that we're going to have. I'm going to do Command or Control Z to go backwards several times to undo what I just did. Now you can see my type is back to being regular editable type. Before you create outlines on anything, try to remember to get into this habit. Make a copy of it first. So I'm going to click and drag this over to the side. I'm going to hold down Alt as I do that and then let go of my mouse. And now I've made a copy of it. Now I'm going to go back and I'm just going to leave that there. It's going to stay there forever. It's just on the outside of my artboard. It's just hanging out there in case I need it later. And believe me, there's going to be times when you're going to need it. I'm going to go ahead and create outlines on this type. Type, create outlines. And now it's not editable anymore. But I realize that I want this word to be a different font, for instance, or I've misspelled it. I can't edit it from here. Maybe it's the next day when I go back to make some changes and I want to change the appearance of this word. And maybe I want to change the font, but I can't change it because it's not a font anymore. But I can go over here, change this font to something like this. Let me make that smaller so you can see it. Now I've changed the font. I can bring this back onto my artboard and I can create outlines on this. But before I do that, I'm going to make a copy of it. Holding down Alt to make a copy and then letting go with the mouse. So always make sure to make copies of your type before you create outline. And you might even do it, once I have this all settled, I might just select all this, move it over to the side, make a copy, and then I can create outlines on this whole thing all at once. Excuse me. Type, create outlines. Now I have outlines on this type. So when you submit files to me, always make sure you've created outlines on all your type before you send it to me. But make a copy first. That's how and why to create outlines.